So we're in the book of Isaiah, chapter 29 this morning, and there is, Isaiah is this real powerful prophetic text that is pointing to the ways that God will both judge and also provide hope to his people. And I think, so we actually, as a church, we're sitting in the book of Isaiah right now as we go through our Advent series, and there's this acknowledgement that Isaiah, of course, is speaking to specific people at a specific time in the history of God's people, but also as Christians, we see that perhaps there is not just historical meanings to this text, but there's also a kind of doctrinal or Christological meaning that we find in some of these texts in Isaiah that look forward, that look toward God's hope and deliverance. So this is Isaiah 29, and there's this declaration of what things will be like when God delivers his people. And for me, there's this celebration. It starts in 17. In just a little while, won't Lebanon become farmland once again, and the farmland be considered a forest? On that day, the deaf will hear the words of a scroll, and freed from dimness and darkness, the eyes of the blind will see. The poor will again find joy in the Lord, and the neediest of people will rejoice in the Holy One of Israel. And just think of the words of hope here. Think of all the brokenness in the world that we know now that really has in many ways been a part of the world since its inception. And think of how this declaration of hope is celebrating the deliverance from that brokenness, right? The tyrant will be no more, the mocker will perish, and all who plot evil will be eliminated. All who incriminate others wrongly, who entrap the judge in the gate and pointlessly postpone justice for the innocent. Therefore proclaims the Lord, of the God of the house of Jacob, who redeemed Abraham. Jacob won't be ashamed now, and his face won't grow pale now. When he sees his children among them, the work of my hands, proclaiming my name holy, they will make holy the Holy One of Jacob and stand in awe of Israel's God. Those who wander in spirit will have understanding, and those who grumble will gain insight. Another translation says, those who err in spirit will come to understanding, and those who grumble will accept instruction. For me, as we sit in this season of Advent and consider the words of Isaiah that offer both judgment of God's people, but also hope in coming out of that judgment, I think there's this invitation here with this text to see that one of the examples of God moving with power and bringing about hope and fulfilling this sort of movement of deliverance here on earth is that those who wander in spirit will gain understanding, and those who grumble, those who are grumbling against one another, will gain insight and accept instruction. And I think right now we find ourselves in a situation in the world where there are competing ideas and competing ideologies and competing, whether it's spiritualities or political ideas or whatever. And there's this tendency to grumble against ideas that are different than ours. And I think for those of us who call Christ our King, we get a vision of what it looks like for God to move in power in this world. And we see that part of that is those who wander in spirit gain understanding, and those who grumble accept instruction. And so for me, I always want to be challenged and reminded that I don't know everything, that I am willing to acknowledge the fact that I need to be able to receive instruction from people who have a challenging word for me, and to have that posture of humility, the posture of meekness. So today, as we look toward the hope that we see declared in Isaiah, as we recognize that one of the signposts, if you will, of God's uh, movement of deliverance is this idea that grumbling is replaced with accepting instruction. May we understand that we don't know everything. May we understand that there are people who can offer us instruction that is perhaps unsettling to us or disturbing to us, and yet at the same time, it is leading us further on and further into the beauty of God's kingdom here on earth as it is in heaven. So may we sit in that space of both judgment and hope this morning, understanding that perhaps sitting with both of those might lead us toward experiencing a greater movement of God in our world, in our lives. Amen.